If you
show, while the mainstream media continues to cover nonsense like the January 6th hearings, and I don't think anybody on earth knows anybody who cares, you have the media talking about it as if it's worse than 9/11, which, I mean, just insane type of narratives that you constantly hear, but nobody really actually cares. But there's a reason they're constantly pushing it on people, because they want to get you prepared for what they're about to do, which is destroy this country with a civil war. But while that's happening, these are stories that don't get reported on, but I'm here to report on them. And that's in Utah. Wow, we have somebody, another quote unquote, person in somewhat of a position of power who's being accused of satanic ritual abuse. Of course, you'll have to hear this narrative for yourself, because some of the accusations are just completely accurate accusations that we constantly hear with satanic ritual abuse. That has to do with cannibalism, drinking blood, those sorts of things. And of course, the disgusting other side of it that involves, intercourse. But on top of all of those narratives, you also have mental health playing into it. That the person being accused is talking about the person having mental health problems. Because all they need to do when they get accused of satanic ritual abuse is say that they're crazy, wildish accusations, and the masses believe that they're crazy, wild accusations. And now they're going to tie mental health into it. So people who believe that there's actually Satanists doing this stuff need to be questioned for mental health. But here's the story in Utah.
Top prosecutor and sheriff sparred publicly today in a bizarre series of news conferences.
County Attorney David Leavitt called for Sheriff Mike Smith to resign if, as he suspects, an investigation Smith announced this week is politically motivated. KSL investigator Daniela Rivera joins us now to explain. Danny?
Well, the Utah County Sheriff's Office announced yesterday they're investigating claims of ritualistic child sexual abuse from decades ago, and they called for victims and witnesses to come forward. They did not release any names or point to specific cases, but today the county attorney did. David Leavitt shared in a news conference that he is named in a victim's statement from a 10-year-old case.
That the Sheriff's Office is using its position for political gain.
Claims outlined in a 151-page victim statement from a 2012 case against a therapist named Utah County Attorney David Leavitt and several others.
Alleging that we were guilty of cannibalizing young children and murdering young children.
The case was dropped. Leavitt says he never knew about the statement naming him until a reporter gave him the document yesterday. The same day, the sheriff's office made a vague announcement calling for victims of ritualistic sexual child abuse between 1990 and 2010 to come forward. Now, Leavitt calls that effort a political attack.
Why is it occurring 7 days before the ballots drop in my election?
Leavitt now calling for an investigation into the sheriff's office, accusing law enforcement of leaking the victim's statement.
And if there is such a link, then I call upon him to resign.
And taking aim at the woman who named him years ago, over and over repeating this claim about her mental health.
By that tragically mentally ill woman.
How dare you? These are victims of crime who have mustered the courage to come forward. And this is what we call them, is mentally ill.
Utah County Sheriff Mike Smith holding his own news conference a couple hours later.
He released a lot of information. He did. That we never would have released.
He notes Leavitt is the one who publicly attached himself to their investigation. And they intend to continue forward, along with several other agencies involved, including the FBI. But they are not naming who they consider to be suspects.
Again, we won't be intimidated by Mr. Leavitt, by his attempts to derail our investigation. We will continue to do our jobs.
Leavitt insists the fact that the old case was dropped signals the claims were baseless, but admits he has not reviewed it himself.
This case was dismissed almost 10 years before I took office.
And you have access to the case file then, correct?
I can find it. Yeah, it's in the archive someplace.
Have you not looked at it?
No, it's going to take several days.
Meanwhile, the sheriff says their investigation is based on more than one person's word.
There are multiple victims involved in this case, and there are multiple victims corroborating information between their accounts.
The sheriff says his agency did not release any documents related to the investigation, but the KSL investigators did obtain a copy of the victim's statement, and we did so through a public records request to the Provo Police Department. Dan and Deanie.
A lot to still sort out on this one, Daniela. Thank you.
So this is eerily, obviously familiar to many of the cases that I've covered over the years. If you're not familiar with McMartin, McMartin is the story that really woke me up. I was awake, but I wasn't super awake to a lot of the stuff with the occult until McMartin. And to me, there's probably no story more horrifying or heartbreaking than that one. But let's take a look at this story, which of course the mainstream media is not covering, but it is in Newsweek, where they say attorney accused of murdering small children, cannibalism, that they're outlandish. Well, of course they are, right? They're outlandish. Why? Why do these stories constantly come up, right? And why is it that the people who are accused always end up being put in the media as victims? Always. Nobody sees a thing there. You had the McMartin, oh, they were the victims, right? You had the Pizzagate stuff they had to come out and talk about. There's so many things over the years. You had the West Memphis 3, which if you've heard of the West Memphis 3 and you actually believe the HBO documentary, you're out of your mind. And I've been saying that for years, and I've had Christians argue with me about it. Why don't you go check out Damien Eccles' YouTube channel, where he's constantly promoting and talking about Aleister Crowley's teaching and teaching people black magic. There was a reason that celebrities went and bailed the West Memphis 3 out and then pinned it on the father, but nobody ever got arrested, right? Because that's how this works. They bail one another out. They constantly protect the occult. That's what they do. And then they tell you that people who think the occult exists are insane people. We literally have satanic churches in this country who come out and tell us, in satanic temples, that they don't worship Lucifer. Yet every single agenda that they promote has everything to do with occult practice, like Planned Parenthood, like going after victims of SRA, like constantly supporting pride, constantly supporting feminism. I mean, all of these are agendas for the New World Order. And this is what the occult's doing. Do without will shall be the whole of the law under love. So here's the story. 2 public officials in Utah are engaged in a strong war of words and accusations following the announcement of a ritualistic abuse and trafficking investigation. Utah County Sheriff Mike Smith and Utah County Attorney David Levitt, both of whom, I wonder what he is, Levitt, were elected to their representative positions in 2018 and are up for re-election this year, held their own press conferences yesterday to refute each other's statements about said investigation. Now, nothing will come of this, of course, because they'll just say that the one guy's doing it to get votes and wants the other guy out of power. That's the narrative that they'll push, as if their votes actually count. And people go back and forth, and they'll be like, "Oh, that's crazy." It sounds like something out of a movie. It sounds like something out of Rosemary's Baby. Yet this has been going on forever. They've been covering things up like the blood libel forever. If you look through history at all these stories, they constantly come out and they say, "Oh, these have been debunked as conspiracies," or these have been debunked as crazy things that Christians thought, right? The blood libel, which I've covered, which is really the basis of vampire stories, goes back to a certain group of people who are constantly causing harm to children. And you're not allowed to talk about it because it's hate speech, because God forbid you talk about these people and expose who they are and what their teachings tell everybody, and we know who these people are. But anyway, they say portions of these allegations were confirmed, the sheriff's office said, encouraging victims and individuals with knowledge of such crimes to step forward to receive assistance and aid investigators. Now, one of the reasons you don't constantly hear these stories is because they do this to young children, and trauma-based mind control causes these children to put walls up in their head, okay, in their brain. They put walls up, and they're fearful for their entire lives. Lots of these people flee. They change their names. They go underground because they're afraid if they ever come forward as adults that they'll be taken down, because these people are murderers. So if these people are murderers, they've already been threatened. Hey, if you ever come forward, I'll kill you. And these people have already been beaten so bad and had their lives ruined by these sick satanic scumbags that it's hard for them to come forward. And when they do come forward, there's places that they meet, one of which I believe is in Washington every year. It's how convenient that the Satanic Temple shows up and mocks them. Imagine if people mocked just a regular victim. How about just somebody who was, raped, right? Say there was like a group of people who got raped, and then people went there and mocked it. You know, you'd be run through the dirt. People would want you arrested. But the Satanists can do that to these poor people because the fact that they say it was satanic ritual abuse makes them crazy. And it, the media just says, oh, they're making it up because these people are all in on it. It's really just, it's heartbreaking and disgusting. And it makes me want to punch a hole in the wall, to be honest with you. According to Utah's Public Health Indicator-Based Information System, IBIS, sexual violence in the state is described as a serious public health problem and suggests that 1 in 6 women and 1 in 25 men experience. I mean, they just go through this and they don't really get to any of the stuff about satanic ritual abuse. They don't bring up any of these cases that have happened. And all these cases that have happened, these people have always gotten out of prison. Always. After they were convicted. Oh, well, they got convicted wrongly by crazy Christians who think that this crazy stuff's going on. It's like, hi, does anybody see this actually pattern here happening where people are coming forward saying this has happened and it's automatically getting dismissed now? Whereas in the past, people were actually getting arrested, and then all those people who got arrested are getting let out of prison for committing these heinous acts because they say, well, I mean, sounds cuckoo, or the cop was a Christian, or so-and-so, they just wanted money. These are all the narratives they play, and the stupid public believes it. I can't wait for God's wrath on these people. So they say, the guy who's accused found out about his alleged involvement in this specific investigation due to a 151-page document obtained from a tragically mentally ill woman. So there's the mentally ill part that they're going to tie in. People who believe the occult exists, people who believe satanic ritual abuse is real, these are all going to be things that they tie into this mental health thing. That's why I've been talking about the mental health in relation to the Bang Bangs and to the relation of guns. Because all of us, people like us, are not going to be allowed to own guns. They're going to convince everybody that ties into mental health. They won't even have to convince anybody. That'll just be in the paperwork because it's going to be a loose term, just like hate speech. Oh, what's hate speech? People do videos about me all the time, hating on me, calling me a lunatic and crazy. Well, what if lunatic and crazy really hurt my feelings and made me cry? Could that be considered hate speech? Oh, it's not hate speech. But if somebody wants to cut off their dong and if people like me want to expose it, that's hate speech, right? When you're exposing insanity, insane behavior, right? So the mentally ill part is a big part of this. And of course, like I said, this isn't a national story, because why would it be? Because these are the types of stories that they just want to go hush hush with. And of course, then the little that they give on the information, they want to tie into QAnon, right? Why not? Oh, the sheriff is a member of QAnon, they say. The sheriff is, he likes to listen to QAnon videos, so that must mean that he's just a crazy white supremacist or a crazy guy that thinks Satanists exist. And that's the whole reason the CIA created QAnon. It's just it's a vessel for them to link everyone to. They would link me to QAnon, even though I 100% know that it's not real and that it's a CIA operation. But they would say, oh, this guy he's a QAnon, crazy. The type of, or they'll say the type of conspiracies that QAnon gets people riled up into, even though people like me were around long before QAnon was. And, they were censoring people like us, but they don't seem to censor the QAnon stuff, right? Wouldn't the FBI and the CIA shut down QAnon? Oh, they can't find out who he is? Really? Really? They can't find out who he is? Was he have an amazing VPN? They can't go? I mean, what do these people do? What do we pay our tax money to these government agencies for? Oh, right. We pay them the tax money so they can use it to traffic. Gotcha. Because that's how this whole sick thing works. So this is the story out of Utah. Of course, the guy will constantly say that it's some crazy thing and, tragic, the person's just a tragic victim of mental health. And we have such a mental health problem in this country. And then, of course, they use the C19 as another way to just talk about mental health. They're like, well, what happened in the last 2 years, people have become very mentally unhealthy because we locked everybody up and told them that there was a big thing going on, when in fact we were just trying to get the thing inside of them. Right. So keep an eye on stories like this and this specific story for how the narrative plays out. I'll cover it in more detail when more stuff comes out. I'm sure it'll just get dismissed, but I guarantee you in mental health, this type of stuff is going to be tied into it.